Well, folks, we finally made it to Monday, March 24th. It's currently 8:35 a.m. and the bond market over there in the UK is falling apart. Everything's going to be coming down just as we'd said. What's happening is the Bank for International Settlements and all their minion banks are being taken down. They all got to go down. They're all going to be coming back, though, independent sovereign banks issuing real money by each individual country. Canada has issued a travel advisory warning that Canadians who stay in the U.S. for more than 30 days could face fines and misdemeanor charges. FBI Director Kash Patel to fire 1,000 ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agents. Mother charged with murder after allegedly slitting her son's throat and leaving his body surrounded by newly purchased Disneyland souvenirs. A 3-year-old boy in Cambodia has died after testing positive for H5N1 bird flu. He fell ill after his family cooked and consumed sick chickens. FBI Director Kash Patel warns that more major arrests are on the way, saying the agency is just getting started. In the past 3 weeks alone, the FBI has taken down more than three of the most wanted criminals, and we're only warming up. Well, here we go to another oratory here. Margaret Ann and I have been on the roll. Today, let's delve into a topic that's been making more waves recently than some of the sharpest minds have in the world around sounding alarms over a major development that could have significant implications for both the broader economy and precious metals, especially silver. We all know that the global economy is unpredictable, and we've seen financial heavyweights predict downturns before. One of the most notable predictions came from Dr. Michael Burry, the investor made famous by the 2008 financial crisis. Dr. Burry, the mind behind The Big Short, saw the financial bubble collapsing before it happened. He warned of the dangers when so many were blind to the risks. And now, fast forward to 2025, and Burry has once again issued a warning, this time concerning something that might seem surprising at first, but the mass spending cuts by Doge. You may be wondering, what does Doge and its spending cuts have to do with the economy or silver? Well, here's the connection. Doge, in this context, represents a major economic player or sector that has been exercising drastic spending cuts. While these cuts might seem like simple cost-saving measures in the short term, Dr. Burry's warning is clear. The market is underestimating their true economic impact. When companies or sectors cut back on spending, especially at the scale we're talking about here, the ripple effect is absolutely huge. These cuts don't just impact businesses themselves, but also the broader supply chain, consumer behavior, and even investor sentiment. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to volatility, especially in the markets that are already on shaky ground. Now let's talk about how all this ties into silver. Silver has historically been a safe haven asset, a precious metal that investors flock to when there's uncertainty in the economy. And when traditional markets falter, when corporate spending is slashed, and when confidence is shaken, silver often sees a spike in demand. People are looking for something tangible, something that holds value, and silver has long been that storage of wealth. Dr. Burry's prediction is that we may soon see a rush to precious metals, including silver, as the economic fallout from these cuts begin to unfold. But here's the catch. The mass spending cuts may be the catalyst that sparks a much bigger problem. As more companies retrench, economic growth could slow down, unemployment might rise, and the markets could see a major pullback. When that happens, the value of the dollar could suffer, and as inflation concerns grow, investors will likely turn to silver as a hedge. In short, the cuts from Doge and similar entities could trigger a chain reaction that shakes the markets to their very core. We may not feel it immediately, but just as the dust settles, we can see silver prices rise as investors seek safety from the turmoil in traditional assets. So what does this mean for us as people who are watching these economic signals closely? It's a wake-up call to stay vigilant. It's a reminder to keep an eye on the bigger picture, not just the headlines. When someone like Dr. Michael Burry speaks, it's worth paying attention. He saw the crash coming in 2008, and now he's warning us that a new storm may be brewing. To wrap up, I encourage all of you to keep a sharp eye on the developments in the markets, especially when it comes to things like corporate spending, the behavior of big investors, and the shifting tides that impact assets like silver. The writing may be on the wall, and understanding the bigger forces at play could help you protect the wealth in the long run. Stay informed, stay prepared, and let's continue the conversation. Have a great morning. We'll see you in the next broadcast. Knowledge is the key that unlocks all doors. Dr. Ben Carson. From Representative Andy Biggs, federal judges do not have guaranteed lifetime appointments. Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution says that judges hold their offices during good behavior. Did you know that? Abusing judicial authority for political gain is a gross misconduct. These rogue judges must be held to account.
News, guys, reported by Gaten Pudway. Chief Justice John Roberts caught in an elitist of judges and lawyers that includes James Bosdenberg, Beryl Howell, Admit Mehta, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. You guys got to hear this. An investigative journalist, Bad Kitty Unleashes, reported on Thursday that Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts is involved in an invite-only club for elite judges in Washington, D.C. The elitist Club Americans of court also includes the radical-hating judges James Bosdenberg, Beryl Howell, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Amit Mehta, all hard left judges and Trump haters, okay? John Roberts has been Chief of Justice of the Supreme Court since September of 2005.
Well, to start with, flying a plane load of dangerous criminal gang members out of the country illegal. Biden flying plane loads of over 300,000 illegal aliens into the country is no problem. Huh. What do you guys think about that? Just U.S. Representative Thomas Massie requested Congressman with dual citizen renounce the latter. Dual citizenship elected United States Congress should renounce citizenship in all other countries. At minimum, they should disclose their citizenship in other countries and abstain from votes specifically benefiting those countries. What do you think? Is that fair? It probably refers to mainly Israeli citizens, of whom there are many in the U.S. Congress and who work for Israeli interests. Soros is public enemy number one. George Soros is the enemy. I'm going to bring down the United States by funding black hate groups. We'll put them into a mental trap and make them blame white people. The black community is the easiest to manipulate. Isn't you sweet fella here? Great.
Unbelievable. Right, Director, it's only been a month, but it's been a busy month. And I think part of your success is the good relationship you have with your colleagues, whether it be John Ratcliffe, whether it be Mike Waltz. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a really good national security team. But update us on some things, some highlights of your first month that maybe we missed.
I really appreciate this. This shows what the men and women of the FBI can do when they have leadership who are in lockstep with the national security mission of safeguarding our citizens. Just in the last 3 weeks, Trey, the FBI has arrested and brought to justice, thanks to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi, 3 top 10 of the FBI's most wanted. Let me just say that again. Not 1, not 2, but 3 of the FBI's most wanted top 10 are now in custody because of our relationships with folks like Director Ratcliffe and Secretary Hegseth and Rubio, and the list goes on. But we've also returned to justice in just one short week's time one of the architects of the Abbey Gate explosion that killed 13 of our service members. We did that in 1 week, flying through multiple countries and going into Pakistan and utilizing our liaison relationships and the leverage that we have, thanks to great guys like Johnny Ratcliffe, and getting a modicum of justice to the American people. And just to put that in perspective, those folks have been on the run for 4 years. And in the last 12 months before I got into this seat, Trey, do you know how many top 10 FBI's most wanted were arrested by the FBI? 0. That's the difference. Yeah. 4 weeks in, we got 3, and we're just warming up.
So breaking, Mike Lee calls for the Federal Reserve to be abolished. Let's see, watch that happens. Are you prepared for that to happen? Are you out of the dollar together? And if the Federal Reserve, or when the Federal Reserve goes out of business, all private companies can. They are private companies. They're owned by the Bank for International Settlements. They're not federal, and there's no reserves when the Federal Reserve banking system here in the U.S. The central bankers have taken it all from us. Where's that gold and silver coming back from? Probably the owners of the BIS. They're sending it back to the U.S. Otherwise, they wind up with a whole lot of egg on their face. Not a real good idea. Let's take a look at what's going on with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Watch.
Chairman and Commissioners of the Securities and Exchange Commission. The integrity of financial markets depends upon adherence to fundamental legal and economic principles. Today, I come before you not with mere allegations of misconduct, but with irrefutable evidence of systemic fraud at the highest levels of our financial system. I implore this commission to open an immediate investigation into the Federal Reserve System, which has engaged in deceptive financial practices that violate both the letter and spirit of securities law. The Federal Reserve purports to issue money, yet we must ask, what exactly is a U.S. dollar? Under U.S. law, a dollar has a precise definition, one which Federal Reserve notes do not meet. The Coinage Act of 1792 defined a dollar as 371.25 grains of pure silver, or 24.75 grains of pure gold. This definition has never been repealed, and remains the only lawful basis for what constitutes a dollar. Furthermore, the U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power to coin money and regulate its value, not to create money out of thin air, or to delegate such authority to a private entity like the Federal Reserve. Article 1's Section 10 of the Constitution reinforces this by prohibiting states from making anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Yet, the Federal Reserve System operates outside these legal constraints, issuing irredeemable paper notes under the guise of lawful money. Federal Reserve notes were once redeemable in gold, but that convertibility was revoked in 1933 for domestic transactions, and eliminated entirely in 1971 under President Nixon. This severed the connection between Federal Reserve notes and lawful money, rendering them unbacked securities, claims to dollars rather than dollars themselves. The Federal Reserve notes currently circulating are not lawful money, but instruments falsely claiming to be such. The Securities and Exchange Commission is tasked with protecting investors and maintaining fair, orderly, and efficient markets. However, the Federal Reserve's practices undermine these very principles. The issuance of Federal Reserve notes, which lack lawful consideration, constitutes a violation of securities laws. Federal Reserve notes are issued against government debt securities, but this debt is itself based on an unlawful premise, the monetization of instruments that do not meet the legal definition of money. The entire financial system, therefore, operates on a deception, an illusion of value that, in reality, rests on nothing but confidence and coercion. 31 U.S.C. paragraph 5103 states that United States coins and currency, including Federal Reserve notes, are legal tender for all debts, but this provision does not override the Constitution or the Coinage Act. It merely states that Federal Reserve notes are accepted as payment, but does not redefine what a dollar is. The statutory definition of the dollar, as tied to gold and silver, remains intact. Any attempt to enforce the use of irredeemable paper notes as if they were lawful money constitutes an unconstitutional expansion of governmental power and a violation of fundamental securities principles. The SEC has previously taken action against Ponzi schemes and fraudulent financial instruments, yet the Federal Reserve operates a system that exceeds the scale of any past fraud. It creates money out of nothing, lends it at interest, and expands or contracts its supply at will, manipulating markets in a manner that would be criminal for any private institution. Under existing securities laws, any entity issuing an instrument that falsely claims to be redeemable or backed by real value is engaged in securities fraud. If the Federal Reserve's activities were undertaken by a private firm, the SEC would have shut it down long ago. I anticipate that defenders of the Federal Reserve will argue that Congress has the sovereign authority to issue fiat currency, and that legal precedent, such as Knox v. Lee and Juilliard v. Greenman, has upheld the constitutionality of legal tender laws. However, these arguments fail on multiple fronts. First, the government does not possess powers that the people themselves do not have. The Declaration of Independence affirms that government derives its powers from the consent of the governed. If individuals cannot create money out of thin air and force others to accept it under penalty of law, then neither can Congress. Second, precedent is not infallible. The Supreme Court has reversed itself when it recognized past rulings as unconstitutional or unjust, as in Brown v. Board of Education, overturning Plessy v. Ferguson. Knox, Lee, and Juilliard v. Greenman may have upheld legal tender laws, but precedent alone cannot override the Constitution's explicit mandates regarding money. Third, the argument that a return to a gold-backed system is impractical is misleading. The issue is not whether a gold standard is convenient, but whether fiat currency is lawful. It is not. The SEC is tasked with upholding legal and financial standards, not accommodating government overreach. Fourth, the assertion that all modern economies operate on fiat currency does not justify systemic fraud. The United States is not bound to follow the errors of other nations. Historically, the most prosperous and stable periods in U.S. history were when money was tied to gold and silver. The rise of fiat currency has coincided with repeated economic crises, including the Great Depression, the 2008 financial collapse, and the ongoing expansion of unpayable national debt. Finally, the SEC cannot ignore the financial exploitation at play. The Federal Reserve's ability to create money ex nihilo allows it to extract real value from the economy while giving nothing of value in return. If an individual or a corporation engaged in such practices, issuing fraudulent instruments, manipulating markets, and coercing acceptance of worthless securities, they would be prosecuted under securities law. That the Federal Reserve operates under a congressional charter does not absolve it of fraudulent conduct. It makes the need for scrutiny even more urgent. This commission has the power and the duty to investigate financial fraud, regardless of how entrenched or politically protected it may be. It must recognize that Federal Reserve notes are not lawful money, that the Federal Reserve's issuance of these instruments constitutes systemic fraud, and that continued inaction enables economic exploitation on an unprecedented scale. The SEC must fulfill its mandate by launching an immediate investigation into the Federal Reserve System and its role in perpetuating this financial deception. The law is clear. The Constitution does not grant Congress the power to create fiat currency, and any attempt to force its acceptance as the equivalent of lawful money is unconstitutional. The SEC was not established to legitimize fraud, but to expose and prevent it. It is time to uphold the principles of transparency, integrity, and justice by holding the Federal Reserve accountable. Respectfully submitted, Zachary Moore.
Folks, the Coinage Act of 1792 was signed on April 2nd, 1792, and it called it 371.25 grains of silver. This is a grain of silver, okay? 371.25 of these things. Look how small it is, okay? Those things are supposed to have value. Do you see this? Okay, so this is what a dollar is supposed to be. What is it now? Is any relevance back to silver? No. We need to go back to the way the Constitution was really originally written and get rid of all these things that have been causing us so many problems. Just taking a look at the number of new taxes they have planned here right now. Repeal the phase into the standard deduction that's going to generate another $344 million. Establish a new 2% surcharge on capital gains income in excess of $350,000 with a 1.25% to the general fund and 7.75% to transportation fund. That's going to generate another 229 to 138 trillion dollars. $32 million increased the tax rate from 15% to 20% with the increase going to the general fund. This is the type of new taxes that are coming up they want to shoot us with here, folks. But what I say is enough, because we already have 151 taxes on each loaf of bread. And then there was President Trump that once, Bush that once said if the folks ever found out what they were doing to us, they'd chase us down in the streets and they would lynch us. Because we need to get back to what real money actually is. See, the word dollar isn't even a word. The word was originally thaler. Thaler is the meaning, German meaning of silver. Interesting. But shekel means silver. Drachma means silver. Lira is a pound. See, all the etymological roots to all these names of currencies around the world, they all have a root meaning back to something that's real and tangible. And that's why Pastor Belcher and I talk about the coin of the realm. We talked about how many times silver and gold is mentioned in the Bible. We're getting back to being a Christian country again. Hope you guys will come with us.